6 years after Claire Dawson vanished on a quiet residential street. A city maintenance crew doing unrelated. Storm drain repairs made. A discovery half a mile downstream from where her phone sent its final signal. What they found didn't answer every question about that October night, but it answered the one question her family had waited 6 years to hear. This is what happened after the case went cold, and why. Even now, it still isn't fully solved. Quick recap if you're new. 9 years ago, 22-year-old Claire Dawson left for a 15-minute walk to a friend's house 4 blocks away. She never arrived. Her last phone signal placed her near a wooded drainage area roughly halfway there. No struggle was found. No witness ever came forward. Cadaver dogs alerted briefly near that drainage area twice, then lost the scent both times, a detail investigators could never fully explain. 3 theories dominated the case for years. A random encounter with a stranger. Something involving someone she knew. Or, the one her family held onto longest, that she was somehow still alive. For 6 years, none of those theories moved an inch closer to confirmed. Then, in the spring of the 6th year, a city crew doing unrelated infrastructure work changed everything. The crew was inspecting an aging storm drain culvert system nearly half a mile downstream from the wooded area near Claire's last phone. Ping, routine infrastructure. Work with nothing to do with her case. One worker noticed what he initially assumed was debris caught in a grate below a junction point, where 2 underground channels merge. It wasn't debris. Police were called immediately. The area was secured, and a forensic recovery team spent the better part of 3 days processing the site. What they recovered were partial skeletal remains, along with personal items, badly degraded from years of exposure to moving water, among them a corroded metal button consistent with a jacket. Claire's mother would later confirm her daughter had been wearing that night. Identification wasn't immediate. Remains submerged in a moving water system for years are difficult to work with, and investigators were careful not to raise the family's hopes or fears before they had something certain. DNA testing, using techniques far more advanced than what existed when Claire disappeared, took several additional weeks. When the results came back, they confirmed what almost everyone following the case had quietly suspected for years and had hoped, right up until the end, might not be true. A question that came up constantly in the comments on Part 1 deserves a direct answer. Why wasn't this stretch of the drainage system searched thoroughly back when Claire first disappeared? According to records from the original investigation, the culvert network beneath that part of town runs nearly 4 miles end to end, much of it too narrow, unstable, or actively flooded to enter safely without confined space equipment most local departments don't have on hand. The original search examined accessible entry points near where the dogs alerted. It did not, and by the department's own later admission, could not fully clear the entire connected system with the resources available at the time. It's an uncomfortable answer, but an honest one. Not every square foot gets searched in a missing persons case, even when investigators do everything right. Sometimes the missing piece isn't a failure of effort. It's a genuine limitation of what's physically checkable. In the earliest days of a case, before anyone knows they're searching for a body instead of a living person. The remains were Claire Dawson's. Her mother was notified in person, at home, by the same detective who'd worked the case in its earliest years, and had never officially closed his file, even after being reassigned. In the one interview she gave afterward, Claire's mother said the news brought something she hadn't expected. Not closure exactly, but the ability, finally, to stop waiting. I always told people I hoped she was alive somewhere, she said. But some part of me had been grieving her for years already. This just let me stop pretending I wasn't. The discovery location mattered immediately to investigators. It sat downstream from the exact drainage area where cadaver dogs had alerted 2 years earlier, before losing the scent, a mystery that suddenly had a far more plausible explanation. Moving water in an underground system can carry scent, and remains well beyond where dogs first pick anything up. Here's what the discovery confirmed. Claire almost certainly entered that drainage system very close to where her phone sent its last signal, and very close to that night. The physical evidence lines up with the timeline nearly perfectly. Here's what it didn't confirm: how she got there, and why. Years of water exposure had degraded the remains, to the point where examiners could not determine a clear cause of death. There was no definitive evidence of trauma consistent with an assault, but examiners noted that absence doesn't rule one out either. It simply means the evidence needed to prove it no longer exists in a usable form. No physical evidence tied to another person was recovered at the site. No DNA, no additional personal items belonging to anyone else, nothing linking the location to a specific individual. In other words, the case moved from missing to found. It did not move from unsolved to solved. Claire's official case status still reads, to this day, as an open death investigation, not a closed one. So how does this change the three original theories? The still alive theory, the one her family held onto longest, is now, painfully, closed. That's the only theory this discovery fully eliminates. The random stranger and someone she knew. Theories both remain technically alive, and uncomfortably. The discovery location supports either one equally. Someone could have encountered her at the drainage area and put her there deliberately, or, investigators acknowledge, a fall into an exposed section of an aging culvert at night, in an area she wasn't intimately familiar with, can't be entirely ruled out. Though her family and the lead detective have both said, on record they find that explanation difficult to accept given everything else about that night. Ray Sutton, the longtime person of interest, was re-interviewed after the discovery. He was not charged, and detectives confirmed no new physical evidence connects him to the site. He gave one brief statement afterward: I hoped, for her family's sake, they'd finally get an answer. I know this isn't really the one anybody wanted. 9 years later, that's still the most honest way anyone involved has described where this case stands. Claire Dawson's case is still open. It's classified now as an unsolved death investigation, actively reviewed, though detectives acknowledge that without new evidence or a witness finally coming forward, it may stay exactly where it is indefinitely. Her mother still gives an interview every October. The question now isn't just what happened to Claire anymore. It's who else might know something they've never said out loud. Given everything across both parts, the drainage system, the two failed centrales that finally made sense, Ray Sutton's alibi, the total absence of any other physical evidence, what's your read? Accident, or something else? Tell us your theory below. Cases like this only ever move forward when someone remembers a detail they didn't think mattered.